The note was supposed to be a mistake. A careless, unprofessional, almost absurd mistake. At the bottom of a neatly typed job application, where candidates usually wrote expected salary or availability, she had written 5 words that made the entire hiring panel fall silent. Already married to you. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if they believe in kindness, second chances. Stories like this matter because they remind us that sometimes life rewrites itself in ways we never expect. When Aarav Mehta first saw her application, he almost laughed. His company, a fast-growing tech consulting firm built from years of sleepless nights and stubborn ambition, had just opened a senior strategy position. Hundreds of applications had flooded in. He had trained himself to scan resumes quickly, to separate the impressive from the ordinary, the confident from the desperate. He believed hiring was about data, performance, and measurable value. Emotions had no place in boardrooms. Yet this application stopped him. Her name was Naina Verma. Her qualifications were solid but not extraordinary. She had taken breaks in her career. Her experience showed gaps, transitions, and freelance work, nothing that screamed top candidate. And yet, in the final notes section, those 5 words waited like a quiet explosion. Already married to you. Naina almost did not come to the interview. She had rewritten that note 3 times before submitting the application. She knew how it looked, reckless, strange, possibly humiliating, but she had nothing left to lose. Her savings were nearly gone. Her father's medical bills had drained what little security she once had. Her previous employer had shut down without notice, leaving her unemployed in a city that moved too fast to notice someone falling behind. She had seen Aarav Mehta once before, not in a corporate setting, not across a polished conference table. She had seen him on the worst night of her life. 3 years earlier, on a rain-soaked highway, her car had stalled. Her phone battery had died. Trucks roared past as water seeped into her shoes. Panic had crawled into her chest. Then a black SUV had stopped ahead. A man had stepped out, umbrella in hand, and without hesitation pushed her car to the shoulder, helped her call roadside assistance, and waited until help arrived. He had refused money. He had simply said that sometimes we are sent to stand beside strangers for a reason. She never forgot his face. Months later, she saw him on a magazine cover. The headline praised Aarav Mehta, the self-made entrepreneur transforming mid-sized businesses. The same calm eyes, the same quiet confidence. Already married to you, she had written, not as romance, not as delusion, but as gratitude. In her heart, she had already tied her loyalty to the man who showed her that kindness still existed in a world rushing forward without looking back. On the day of the interview, she wore her simplest navy suit. It was slightly worn at the cuffs. She had polished her shoes twice. She entered the glass building feeling like an imposter among polished marble floors and employees who moved with certainty. When she stepped into the conference room, Aarav recognized her instantly, not from memory of rain or headlights, but from the look in her eyes. It was the look of someone who had survived something heavy and was still standing. The interview did not go as planned. She was nervous. She stumbled over one financial projection question. She admitted she had been out of the corporate world for over a year while caring for her father. She did not exaggerate her achievements. She did not perform confidence she did not feel. And then Aarav asked her about the note. Her face flushed, but she did not look away. She explained the night on the highway. She explained that sometimes loyalty begins before contracts are signed. She explained that to her, marriage was not romance, but commitment, and she had already committed to the kind of leader she believed he was. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different, not awkward, human. When she left, HR reminded Aarav that other candidates were stronger on paper. One had worked for multinational firms, another had an MBA from a prestigious university. Hiring Naina would require training, patience, and perhaps risk. Aarav had built his company on risk, but this was different. This was not about profit. This was about trust. He did not announce his decision immediately. He went home that evening restless. He remembered the night on the highway. He had not recognized her in the moment, but he remembered the incident clearly. He helped many people when he could. He never expected to see them again. To him, it was simple decency. To her, it had been a turning point. He realized something uncomfortable. In all his interviews that week, Naina was the only one who spoke about purpose instead of salary. 2 days later, he offered her the job. She cried after hanging up the phone, not because she had won something, but because someone had believed in her when her own confidence had thinned to a fragile thread. What neither of them knew was that this decision would challenge them both more than any corporate crisis ever had, because belief is easy to speak about, but difficult to sustain. Naina's first weeks were harder than she imagined. The office culture was sharp, competitive, efficient. Colleagues who had spent years climbing corporate ladders did not welcome her warmly. Some whispered that she must have personal connections with the CEO. Others assumed favoritism. A few openly questioned her competence in meetings. She worked twice as hard to prove she belonged. She arrived early, left late, and took home files to study. She rebuilt her technical skills, refreshed industry reports, and quietly asked junior analysts for updates on tools she had not used in years. Pride had no space in her new routine. But self-doubt did. There were nights she sat in her small apartment staring at spreadsheets, feeling the old fear rise again. What if the note had been foolish? What if Aarav regretted hiring her? What if gratitude was not enough to sustain real performance? Meanwhile, Aarav faced pressure from the board. Quarterly numbers were tighter than expected. Investors wanted aggressive expansion. They questioned why he had chosen a candidate with visible career gaps. Leadership, they reminded him, required tough decisions, not sentimental ones. He never told Naina about those conversations. Instead, he gave her something more valuable than protection: responsibility. He assigned her a struggling client account that others had quietly abandoned. A mid-sized manufacturing firm on the brink of closure, hemorrhaging funds, with demoralized staff and no clear direction. Many believed the account would soon be lost. If she succeeded, it would be undeniable proof of her value. If she failed, critics would feel justified. Naina visited the client's factory floor instead of staying in meeting rooms. She spoke to workers instead of only executives. She listened to frustration, confusion, and fear. She recognized those emotions. They mirrored her own from months earlier. The problem was not lack of talent. It was lack of communication and trust. She proposed restructuring operations gradually instead of cutting jobs immediately. She designed transparent reporting systems. She encouraged leadership to meet workers weekly. Her strategy was slower, but rooted in rebuilding confidence. Some executives resisted. They wanted quick layoffs and visible cost reductions. But Naina held her ground with data and quiet conviction. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, numbers stabilized. Production errors decreased. Employee turnover dropped. The client extended their contract. Inside the company, whispers began to shift. Colleagues who once doubted her now asked for her input, not because of sympathy, because of results. Aarav watched from a distance, careful not to interfere. He saw something he had nearly forgotten in himself: resilience born not from ambition, but from gratitude. Yet just as stability returned, a crisis struck. A major investor pulled funding unexpectedly. Expansion plans froze. The board demanded immediate cost-cutting measures, including potential layoffs within their own firm. Departments braced for impact. Naina feared she would be among the first to go. She would understand, she told herself. Business was business, but the thought tightened her chest. Not because of salary, because she had finally found belonging. During an emergency leadership meeting, Aarav faced the board's insistence on downsizing. Cutting newer employees would be simplest. It would reassure investors. He looked at the numbers. Then he looked at the faces around the table. He remembered the night in the rain. He remembered that building a company was not just about growth charts. It was about the culture that outlived financial storms. He proposed an alternative plan: temporary executive pay cuts, reduced expansion targets, and strategic partnerships instead of layoffs. It was bold, risky, unpopular. The board hesitated, but his conviction was unwavering. The proposal passed by a narrow margin. No employees were laid off. When the news spread, relief rippled through the office. Many never knew how close they had come to losing their jobs. Naina learned about the decision weeks later from a senior manager. She understood then that belief ran both ways. She had written, "Already married to you," as a symbol of loyalty. He had answered not with romance, but with responsibility. Years passed, and the company grew not just in revenue, but in reputation. Clients spoke of integrity, employees spoke of stability, investors spoke of sustainable leadership. The crisis that once threatened collapse became a quiet chapter in their history. Naina rose steadily through the ranks, not because of favoritism, but because her results became consistent. She mentored new hires, especially those with unconventional backgrounds. She insisted that resumes never tell full stories. Her father recovered slowly. Medical bills were paid. Her small apartment became a brighter space, filled with plants and sunlight instead of anxiety. One evening, during an anniversary celebration of the company's founding, Aarav stood before employees and shared the story of the rain-soaked highway, without naming her at first. He spoke about how small acts of kindness echo further than we imagine. He admitted that leadership is not proven by how high we rise, but by how many we lift when storms return. Then he called Naina to the stage. He spoke of the note that had once made him pause. He said that in business, contracts bind us legally, but trust binds us morally. He said she reminded him that gratitude can be more powerful than ambition. The room stood in applause. Naina felt tears blur the lights above her. She thought of the night her car stalled. She thought of the days she counted coins before grocery shopping. She thought of the fear that nearly convinced her not to attend the interview. And she realized something simple and profound. Sometimes we think we are applying for jobs, but we are actually applying for faith. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment "Second chances are real" below if you believe that one act of kindness can transform a lifetime. In the years that followed, Naina helped establish a hiring initiative for candidates returning to work after career breaks. The program gave opportunities to caregivers, individuals recovering from setbacks, and professionals who had been overlooked. The company's culture deepened, loyalty strengthened, performance improved. Investors who once demanded quick cuts now praised the firm's long-term resilience. As for Aarav and Naina, their bond remained rooted in respect. Not a fairy tale romance, not a dramatic confession, but a partnership built on shared values. She had once written, "Already married to you" as metaphor. Over time, it evolved into something more subtle. They were married to the same mission. On a quiet afternoon years later, Naina visited the same stretch of highway where her car had broken down. The road had been widened, streetlights now lined the path, traffic flowed smoothly. She stood there for a moment, letting memory wash over her. If that SUV had not stopped, if that stranger had not cared, if she had not dared to write those 5 bold words, her life might have unfolded differently. Kindness is often dismissed as soft, but it is not soft. It is structure. It is foundation. It is the invisible architecture holding up dreams when storms arrive. As the sun dipped low, she felt no dramatic revelation, no cinematic swell of music, just gratitude, quiet and steady. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a moment when someone stood beside you in your own storm, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these stories reach others who may need hope today. Because somewhere tonight, someone feels like the last candidate. Someone believes their gaps define them. Someone is afraid to write the words that might change everything. And maybe, just maybe, a small act of courage or kindness will rewrite their ending too.